Hi, my name's Helen Scott and I am a Java Developer Advocate here at JetBrains. I'm going to show you some cool things that you can do today in IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition, which is of course free for students and teachers, as well as our community and education editions. We're going to cover things that will help you to go faster when you're writing code, manipulating code, reading code, or refactoring code. And with that, let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is create a brand new Hello World project, so that we can get up and running quickly with IntelliJ IDEA. From the start screen, we can create a new project, open or import an existing project, or get a project from version control. We're going to go ahead and click New Project. In the New Project wizard, we can see the version of Java that we're using, and we could also select libraries or frameworks to shape our project if required. I'm not going to do any of that today though, so I'll click Next and Next again, and I'll name my project Hello World. And then I'll click Finish. We'll navigate to our source folder and create the class that we want in here. We can use a shortcut to do this. We can use Command and N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux to create the new class. There's a lot of new things in here that we could create, but I'm going to select a Java class and call it Hello World. IntelliJ IDEA will create the class construct for us, and we can then use a feature called Live Templates to create our main method with either main or PSVM. They both print the same. Sticking with live templates, we can use SOUT to quickly generate a system.out.println and output our message to the console. Lastly, we can use Ctrl-Shift and R on macOS or Ctrl-Shift and F10 on Windows and Linux to run our program and see that it prints out Hello World. IntelliJ IDEA makes it easy to manage our JDKs as well. In our project structure, we can see which SDK we're using, and if we want to, we can download a new JDK from our selected vendor, and IntelliJ IDEA will ensure that the JDK is downloaded and put in the appropriate location for the operating system. I'm going to switch over to our IntelliJ Samples project now and show you some tips that will help you to go faster when you're writing code. We're going to see just how quickly IntelliJ IDEA can help you to generate some of your base code that you use a lot. We're going to create a new class called MakeJavaBean. We'll create a couple of private variables in here. Firstly, we'll add a string, and then we'll add a private int as well. Now we're ready to start generating code. We can do this with Command and N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux. First up, let's generate a constructor for our class. Now, let's generate some getters for our two variables. Next up, let's generate the equals and hashcode methods for our class. We can accept these options as the defaults, but you can change them if you need to. Let's go ahead with a toString method and generate that as well. And there we have it. We've created our JavaBean. 43 lines of code in total, and we didn't type much of it at all. I only found this feature out whilst I was making this video for you, so I wanted to share it. If you, like me, prefer your constructors at the top of your class and the getters and setters out of the way, you can use a feature called Rearrange Code. The fastest way to get to it is through Find Actions, which is Command-Shift and A on macOS or Control-Shift and A on Windows and Linux to bring up the Find Actions menu. Now we can type in what we're looking for, Rearrange Code. And there we have it. This is configurable by default, but out of the box, it will shift your constructors up and move your getters and setters to the bottom. We've already seen some live templates in action, but let's take a look at a few more. Firstly, complete current statement using Shift, Command and Return on macOS and Control, Shift and Return on Windows and Linux will always strive to make your code compile, whether that's completing the method you're currently working on or closing the parentheses and putting a semicolon at the end of your statement. This is a great safety net. In terms of live templates, the for-i loop is really useful. You can quickly create the loop construct this way, and you can use the tab key to move between the parts of the loop construct that may, or definitely do, need your input. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to replace our loop with an enhanced for loop to improve the readability. If we want to explore other options or change it back, we can use the same shortcut again. We're going to look at this in some more detail later in the presentation. Writing test classes is something that we should all be doing. You can use Shift, Command and T on macOS or Control Shift and T on Windows and Linux to toggle a corresponding test class. If one doesn't exist, IntelliJ IDEA will help you to create it. But in this instance, we actually already have a test class and we just need a new test. We can use Command and N on macOS or Alt and Insert on Windows and Linux again to get IntelliJ IDEA to generate it. We can then use the same shortcut to toggle back to the class that we're working with. Postfix completion is something that you should definitely be incorporating into your repertoire of skills. Postfix completion allows you to think linguistically about what your code is doing and create it that way. For example, we can create this method using code completion, then type in Kiwi with quotes, and retrospectively make it a string with .var. We could also use NN on the string we passed to ensure that the item is not null. Furthermore, we can combine this with live templates to say, print out the item. I recommend you check this out. There is upwards of 40 different types of postfix completion in IntelliJ IDEA. One clipboard is never enough, and IntelliJ IDEA knows this. You can use Shift, Command and V on macOS or Shift, Control and V on Windows and Linux to bring up the paste from history dialog. And yes, it's configurable, and yes, it supports emoticons. Alongside recent history, IntelliJ IDEA gives you local history, which you can access by pressing Shift twice to search everywhere. This is like having a local version control repository on your machine. It might well save you one day. IntelliJ IDEA keeps a record of all the changes you've ever made to each file with a diff view that helps you to understand what's been added, changed, or deleted. Writing code is only a small part of what we do as developers. Manipulating code or someone else's code is going to be something that we'll also have to do a lot of the time. IntelliJ IDEA gives us a lot of options for moving chunks of code around. We can use Command, Shift and down arrow on macOS or Control, Shift and down arrow on Windows and Linux to move a statement down, or the corresponding shortcut with the up arrow to move the statement up. Note that IntelliJ IDEA doesn't let us move it out of the context, irrespective of which line we select. If we select the method declaration line itself, IntelliJ IDEA allows us to jump that whole block of code up or down throughout our class structure, so we can position it wherever we see fit. We can build up our selection based on scope by using Option and Up arrow on macOS or Control and W on Windows and Linux to expand the scope of our selection. We can then use Option and Down arrow on macOS or Control Shift and Down arrow on Windows and Linux to decrease the scope of our selection. We can use the usual shortcuts to cut and paste content in IntelliJ IDEA, as you'd expect. But we may also want to duplicate a line in our editor. We may just want to change a small portion of it, or we may want to apply the whole line to somewhere else. IntelliJ IDEA lets us do this with Command and D on macOS or Control and D on Windows and Linux. Let's paste our comment up here. IntelliJ IDEA gives you lots of ways to manipulate strings. For example, you can press return in the middle of a string and IntelliJ IDEA will append it for you. If you made a mistake doing that, or you just want to join two lines together, you can use Control, Shift and J on macOS, Windows and Linux to join the lines together. If you want to place carrots in multiple locations, you can hold down Option on macOS or Alt and Shift on Windows and Linux and click to place multiple cursors. This is very useful when you want to make the same change in many places. Column select mode is one of those hidden gems in IntelliJ IDEA that makes working with any kind of list format much easier. In this example, I need to make all of my strings final. I could go through them individually, or I could toggle column selection mode with Shift, Command and 8 on macOS or Alt, Shift and Insert on Windows and Linux. Once I've toggled that on, I can drag my caret down my list without holding any other keys down. And then I can type in my missing word. Final. Don't forget to toggle the shortcut off again with the same shortcut. Java supports two types of comments. Firstly, line comments, and secondly, block comments. Instead of using the earlier shortcuts for column select mode, We can also hold down Option on macOS or Alt on Windows and Linux and drag the cursor down our column, and then enter forward slashes to create 3 line comments. Alternatively, we can also select everything and then use Command and forward slash on macOS or Control and forward slash on Windows and Linux to quickly comment content out this way. However, we can also ask IntelliJ to give us a block comment with Option, Command and forward slash on macOS or Control, Shift and forward slash on Windows and Linux. This looks a little bit cleaner when multiple lines are involved. I'm going to use my favourite shortcut here, a Command E on macOS or Control and E on Windows and Linux to find a badly formatted file. We can then use Option, Command and L on macOS or Control, Alt and L on Windows and Linux to properly format our code. This is one shortcut that you really do need to teach your fingers to do on autopilot. It will save you a lot of time and deliver you well-structured code time and time again. Okay, this is my favourite section of this whole presentation. IntelliJ IDEA is super smart. It's always working in the background to reduce errors, fix errors that we do make, and suggest different ways of doing things. Let's take a quick tour of just some of the things that it can do. Errors are something that are part of our careers as developers, but IntelliJ IDEA has a lot of work that it does to reduce the number that we make and help guide us when we ask for it. Let's look at this method. We'll try and create a new list that contains a bunch of strings, and then we'll try and turn it into an instance of a hash map. This is never going to work, and IntelliJ IDEA knows that. We can use Option and Return on macOS or Alt and Return on Windows and Linux to ask IntelliJ IDEA to help us. It gives us a bunch of options to review that could fix the issue, but it can only do so much. It doesn't know which fix we actually want. In this instance, I want to change my variable string list to be of type hash map. So I'll go ahead and select that option. Now I can see that IntelliJ IDEA has highlighted both integer and string in grey. This tells me that they're not used anywhere, so once again I can use the same shortcut to remove them and tidy this code up. IntelliJ IDEA also allows us to jump between errors, that is, things that are preventing our project from compiling. We can use Command and 1 on macOS or Alt and 1 on Windows and Linux to bring up the project window, and then F2 to search for the next error. Let's use Command and 1 and jump back into our editor. There's quite a lot that's wrong here. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to help us fix it up. Firstly, that's definitely not a string with a value like 20. Let's make it an int. Next up, our method has declared that it doesn't return anything, yet here we are trying to return true. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to change the method declaration. Lastly, we can't go changing variables that we've declared as final. Let's get IntelliJ IDEA to make the variable mutable. There are a lot of intentions in IntelliJ IDEA that I recommend you check out. They can often improve the readability of your code or be an excellent learning tool just to toggle between options. Wherever you see this dark orange, you can use that same shortcut of Option Return on macOS or Alt and Return on Windows and Linux to see the suggestion. This code is valid as it is, but if we take IntelliJ IDEA's recommendation, it's a little bit cleaner. We're not done there, however. Now we can see that IntelliJ IDEA has another suggestion for us, which I'm also going to accept. I think you'll agree that it looks a lot more readable now. This shortcut will never change what your code actually does. It will just help you to look at different ways of expressing the same thing. var is a relatively new feature in the Java world, and a very useful one. Let's create a new file input stream called stream, and IntelliJ IDEA is highlighting this as an error because we need to either wrap it in a try-catch block or declare that our method might throw an exception. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we can see that file input stream is quite a lengthy string in its own right. So seeing on both the left and right hand side of the assignment is kind of heavy-handed. We can ask IntelliJ IDEA to replace the left hand side with var, and that improves the readability of our code. When you can clearly see from the right hand side of the assignment what type the left hand side is, then var can be used to reduce the amount of boilerplate code that you need to create. That said, please don't use var if it will harm the readability of your code. Take this slightly crazy line of code. I'm going to declare this as a var to start with and see how I get on. If you pay attention to the hints in IntelliJ IDEA, you can see that eventually it's a long, but you're the one typing the code. It might not be you who's reading it and who needs to understand it. For this reason, I strongly recommend that you use the same inspection to toggle the statement to the explicit variable type, in this case, a long. We can further streamline this statement by using Option and Enter on macOS or Alt and Enter on Windows and Linux and change our code to use the size method. Now it looks better. IntelliJ IDEA has lots of inspections and more are always being added as the language evolves. Here are some of the Java 8 refactorings. We could replace a lambda expression with a method reference, or perhaps our stream and count methods with a size method, like we saw earlier. Writing code is an art. We rarely get it right first time, at least I don't. Even if I do, as the Java language evolves, there will always be a need for an element of refactoring as features come and go. One of the most useful refactorings is extracting and inlining methods. Sometimes you can get a little bit carried away and end up with too much logic in your method. Being the diligent developer that you are, you'll want to improve the readability of your code by extracting it to a new method. We can use Option Command and M on macOS or Control Alt and M on Windows and Linux to get IntelliJ IDEA to extract this to a new method. IntelliJ IDEA will use the comment if there is one and suggest it as a name for the new method. When we press refactor, IntelliJ IDEA goes another step further and lets us know that this code also appears in another method and would we like to replace that occurrence as well. Let's press replace and see what the code looks like. The method extract this loop is now in the two locations as we expected. However, we can also change our mind. IntelliJ IDEA will allow us to inline code just as easily. To inline the method, let's use Option Command and N on a macOS and Control Alt and N on Windows and Linux to inline it. IntelliJ IDEA will inline the code wherever it appeared. It's the exact opposite of what we just did. As well as extracting and inlining methods, we can do the same with variables. We have 3 occurrences of the same variable here, order size. Let's use Option Command and V on macOS or Control Alt and V on Windows and Linux to extract it and replace all occurrences that IntelliJ IDEA has detected. Now we have a new string variable up here. We can optionally declare it final or use a var if we want to. Just as we did with this method, we can also inline variables. To do this, you can use Option Command and N on macOS or Control Alt and N on Windows and Linux to inline it. We can also use Command G on macOS or F3 on Windows and Linux to jump to the next occurrence of our changes. Rarely do we create the perfect structure of packages and classes from the start. Fortunately, IntelliJ IDEA supports us here and does all the lifting and shifting in the background. This class is in the wrong package, so we need to move it. We can use F6 on both macOS and Windows to move it to another package that we define. When we do this, IntelliJ IDEA will update all the dependencies for us, so we don't need to worry about that. Something else that you're likely to want to do a lot is refactor a class, rename it. We can use Shift and F6 on macOS and Windows to bring up the rename dialog and go ahead and change the name. When we press refactor, IntelliJ IDEA searches across our project, even non-Java files, and updates the dependencies. Unless you're working on shiny new projects for your whole career, there's a good chance that you'll need to read and, more to the point, understand someone else's code. Let's look at the things that we can do in IntelliJ IDEA that can help us with this. Parameter hints may seem like a small thing, but as code bases get bigger and more realistic, they can really help you to understand what's going on. In this method, it's pretty clear what the 2 arguments are, so you can hide the parameter hints. Remember, IntelliJ IDEA gives you a lot of options. Keep what works for you and hide what doesn't. The next method though, that looks more complicated. If we hide the parameter hints here, we might be quite lost as to what some of these arguments are. They're just null, which doesn't mean anything to us. If you hide hints that you realise you need, you can get them back by using Command and Comma on macOS or Control Alt and S on Windows and Linux to bring up the settings. Search for inlay hints and go to the exclude list. This is where you can remove any accidental hint exclusions if required. Our parameter hints are now back for this method. Streams in Java can get very complicated just by their very nature of being functional programming. Let's look at this example. At each step of the operation, IntelliJ IDEA tells us what the output will be, allowing us to step through at our own pace and understand each operation before we move on. When we want to understand what someone else's code does, or ours, after some time away, find usages can be very useful. To see what is using a method, we can use Option and F7 on macOS or Alt and F7 on Windows and Linux to bring up the usages of it. We can navigate through the results and select the one that we're interested in. You may have noticed that IntelliJ IDEA also has icons in the gutter. These can help you to understand what's going on as well. We can see them here because this class implements an interface, and we've implemented the methods of that interface. Normally keyboard shortcuts are faster, but let's use the mouse and click on one of these so it takes us to the interface. Now we're here, let's use these icons to navigate to implementation. Our save method has 4 implementations. Let's select the one that we want. So, as I said, keyboard shortcuts are normally faster. To achieve the same thing without clicking on the gutter icons, we can use Option, Command and B on macOS or Control, Alt and B on Windows and Linux. The result is exactly the same. I left this section until near the end because I wanted to show you some cool stuff first. However, being able to navigate around your code quickly and efficiently will dramatically improve your productivity. You've already seen some of these shortcuts today, but let's take a quick tour. I've been using this one quite a lot. It's Command and E on macOS or Control and E on Windows and Linux to navigate your recent files. The same shortcut will toggle to changed files only. You can also type directly into this dialog and search for windows that might or might not have a shortcut associated with them, such as Maven or potentially Terminal. Command and 1 on macOS and Alt and F1 on Windows and Linux will give you your project window. The same shortcut will return your focus to the code window. If you take one thing away from today, let it be the shortcut for Search Everywhere, which is Shift-Shift. It will search across IntelliJ IDEA for whatever you desire. You can search across classes, files, symbols, or actions. Search Everywhere also supports filtering commands with // such as /editor. You can toggle settings on and off here as required. This is what IntelliJ IDEA looks like out of the box. For the purpose of the demo today, I hid some of this stuff to help you focus on what I wanted to show you. However, let's take a quick look at how you can configure it. First off, you can maximize your code space using Shift Command and F12 on macOS and Control Shift and F12 on Windows and Linux. Now, let's start hiding some things. First up, let's turn off our editor tabs. Now, we can hide our status bar. Let's also turn off our navigation bar. And let's get rid of our main toolbar as well. Lastly, let's hide our toolbar windows. And there we have it. That's the minimal interface that we've been working with today. IntelliJ IDEA is very configurable, and as you get more comfortable with the tool, you'll probably want to make some changes that empower you in your daily tasks. You can view and familiarise yourself with all the settings by using Command and Com on macOS or Control, Alt and S on Windows and Linux to bring up the settings dialog. In here, you can type in whatever you're looking for. For example, inspections, live templates, or perhaps appearance. Talking of appearance, and since it's the JetBrains Education Day, I thought I'd show you a fun thing that you can do to make IntelliJ IDEA your own. Let's use Shift-Shift to search for a background image. I have one here that I'm going to use, and I can select how I want it to appear as well. When I click OK, I can see that my JetBrains Education Day image is now set as my background image in IntelliJ IDEA. I've shown you a lot of tips and tricks in this video and their corresponding keyboard shortcuts. Using these keyboard shortcuts will allow you to code faster, and as your finger muscle memory grows, so will your repertoire of shortcuts that you can rely on. If you're curious as to how much time IntelliJ IDEA has saved you, take a look at the productivity guide, which you can find under the Help menu. My usage stats aren't that amazing, as I reset IntelliJ IDEA quite a lot for my job, but I bet yours are substantially more impressive. I hope that you've learned some new tips and tricks today that will help you to code faster with IntelliJ IDEA. Remember, if you can't remember any shortcut, just start with search everywhere, so tap shift twice and it will search across IntelliJ for you. You can build up your skills from there. Thank you for being here and thank you for watching.